Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of Tech School. If you're tuning in on Zoom, we're glad to have you. If you're tuning on YouTube, we're glad to have you guys too. Um, so one thing I did want to mention before we get started, if you have a chance to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and any of our content, feel free to do so. Every like or comment that every interaction that we get with videos like these pushes it out to more people, right? Increases our reach. And so that like or that comment that you leave could allow this video to be able to push it out to an entrepreneur or startup who really needed to hear this message today about project management from Johanna. So if you can, that's a great way for, a little quick, easy way to help the startup community to be able to push that forward. So thank you. And I'll give it to Johanna to start.
Okay, hi. I'm glad everybody's here. I know last time we were able to do a more interactive session, but I think I'm going to give you a bunch of tools today, and then we'll just jump into questions. I do have a lot of material to get through, so if it looks like it's going slow, we may have to break it into two parts. But
yeah, that's fine, John.
That's what I figured. We'll just get whatever we can. But I know some of you have teams for the first time, and some of you may be pretty experienced managing teams. So forgive me for going through the elementary things. It's really geared to the folks that haven't managed a development team before or haven't done it very much. So am I sharing now, or do I still need to?
Still need to share, yeah.
Okay. I have it up in presentation mode. Sometimes it's hard to tell.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Now is it sharing?
Now it's sharing, Johanna.
Okay, perfect. And go over here. I got two screens going, so that's why my eyes are darting around a bit. Okay, congratulations. You have a team. Now what? So I think that this happens to a lot of founders. You sort of start with this thing in your head and you work on it on your own for a while, and then suddenly you have like people that want to know, like, what do you want them to do? And they're really looking for you for guidance, and you're like, well, I haven't figured out what we're going to do yet. How am I supposed to tell other people what we're going to do? So this will help you kind of think through, at least with the development team, what are the activities that you need to do to support them and to shepherd them through a project. And I really designed this talk around the 577 program at USC, where you get a team, a capstone type team of students to work on your project. And the project will probably just last one semester. So I sort of said, let's plan like an 8-week project, knowing that there's going to be vacations and finals and midterms and other stuff for the students. So you really, if you think about it, just have about 8 weeks to really focus on your project. And I don't know, did the projects kick off already?
Yeah, Brianna already has met with the team, I believe 2 times, right, Brianna?
Okay.
2 times, and we meet again next week.
Did you do your win-win already?
Yeah, we just did that 2 days ago, actually.
Okay, so I'm gonna. So some of this we're a little bit behind in the content for you, but I still think the activities are useful, so you can gauge, whether you think it's appropriate for your team. But for the rest of you, if you don't have a team yet, these activities will be useful. So really, like, before your project even starts, there's some planning activities that you can do. But even if your project's already started and you're in the early phases, you can still do these activities. Then I figured that the win-win, did it take about two meetings?
No, it was actually just one.
Just one?
Yeah.
And you've got it all finalized?
No, maybe there is another one. I don't know. They only told me about one win-win meeting so far.
Got it.
We're kind of just doing it like week by week. Just
yeah. I think we had two. I think we had a meeting with the team where we brainstormed and we talked about it, and then I think we had another meeting where we finalized it, but it's been a few years since we did ours. So Carling and Stephen, do you remember?
Yeah, I think the big thing, it took at least 2 weeks. One that we talked with Brianna, that yes, you're kind of fleshing them out, you're doing whiteboard, and then you're going to be scoring them, and then you get to this final result that's going to be used as your roadmap.
Yeah. And then I just was sort of calculating, the project went really fast for us when we did ours. You really probably only have about 3 weeks of building time if you want to leave time for testing and launching. If you are more focused on building the content and you have a team or you feel comfortable doing it yourself, doing the testing and the launching, you probably could stretch out the development time. But I'd encourage you to really tightly frame what you think the team can deliver, so that you get a product in the end. Stephen and Curling, feel free to jump in with your thoughts as I go through this. I know you all haven't seen the content before.
Sure, it looks good, yeah.
So I really wanted to start with this sort of project management 101, because when you're managing a project and a team, you really are doing project management. And there's some key elements to project planning and project management. A lot of project management actually is planning, and then some execution. But really, when the team is executing, you're tracking and communicating and following up. But the bulk of your heavy lifting actually comes at the beginning of the project. And so here's just a little graphic that helps you sort of see the flow of the activities that happen during the course of the project, and we're going to talk about them in a little more detail and how they apply to you. So first we're going to cover charters, schedules, resources, and budget. Those words all sound really boring and scary, so let's jump in. So planning is not just making a schedule. If you're thinking through a plan for your project, you're going to try to answer some basic questions that are common to all projects, so that information is available for you and for your team. The plan can be a tool for communicating, and it includes the schedule. But it isn't only the schedule. So I often start a project especially if it's a really undefined project, with something called a charter. You can do this as like a 1 or 2 page document, and the content is there's no real heavy lifting involved. You don't have all the answers yet, so think about the document as a living document that's going to get updated as you figure things out, but it's sort of the reference document for the project. Especially if you have folks on your team that are working on more than one project. Maybe they're going to school and working on your project, or maybe they're independent consultants and they have 10 clients, or you work in a bigger company and your team is allocated to 4 projects. So a lot of times having some sort of reference helps everybody keep focused on what your project is about. So the project objectives, which are not the same as the scope, come from you. You're the one that's decided, what direction are we going? What do we want to accomplish? We want to build a thing. We want to build a physical thing, or we want to build a software thing, or we want to provide a service. So you're at a very high level thinking about, like, what does your organization or your project want to accomplish? Another thing that's good to have is the requirements, and these can be really basic. It doesn't have to be like a 35-page requirements document. It can be just, what are the essential things that your users are going to need in order to interact with your system. One of the things that I see even really experienced teams get tangled up in is must have versus nice to have. This happens all the time. So a requirement is a thing that is actually required. Like, you can't function without it. And then nice to have is like, it should be blue, or I really like this button over here. So the must have is like, it has to have a button, right? It has to have a login. And then the nice to have is like all the polish and the fancy stuff. Or sometimes the nice to have is I'd like to have 2 buttons. So you need to think through, like, what's really essential. And the way you do that is you kind of brainstorm your list of the stuff that you think is necessary, and you go through and you figure out, you yourself go back through the list and cross out everything that you like. Could I live without this? And be like really hardcore. Just okay, can I live without this? Because you're building an MVP, you have a really small amount of time, and you're going to get feedback from your users, and it's probably not going to be right. So you don't want to spend a lot of effort putting a lot of polish and shine on it, especially in this first iteration. So I always ask people, like, do you have to have it? Is it really, really, really required versus nice to have? So sometimes I see requirements to say, and optionally this. I'm like, that doesn't go in that list. If it's optional, it doesn't go in the list. Okay, so then deliverables. Deliverables is just a fancy word for a thing that gets delivered. That's what are we going to get at the end of the project? We're going to get a document, we're going to get a test case, we're going to get a package of software, we're going to get a few functions coded but not packaged up in any way, we're going to get an executable file. Like, think about, like, what is the thing that you actually want to get at the end? And this comes from a conversation with your team, because if you create this list in the abstract, they may go in a completely different direction, and what you get may not be related to what's on your list. So talk through this with your team, like what's the outcome going to be? Schedule, in this case, it's going to be driven by your 577 team. If you have a contractor, like it may be driven by the budget. It may be driven, if you're working with a university partner, if you're working with, I don't know, any number of reasons could cause a schedule to be driven by somebody other than you. So, so in this case, for Brianna, I think the schedule is driven by your team's course schedule and the guidance that Sue and her team are going to provide. But the budget comes from you. You're the one that decides, like, do we have money to spend on things? Do we have money to buy licenses for things and tools for things, or do we have to use the free versions, or do we prefer to use the free versions? And whether or not you need to pay for things up front. Although there may be expenses. Like when we built our website, Curling, I know we had some templates and other things that we ended up paying for that actually saved our team some time.
Yes.
So think through whether you have any budget available, and if you do, how much is it, and then be real honest with your team. That's been really effective with Steve in managing, our development resources. He has a good sense of, like, how much money is a reasonable amount of money to spend versus, like, if it costs that much, we're probably going to have to find a different solution. And then resources. So all this stuff, you want to document this in your little 1 or 2 page document. The names and the contact information for everybody on your team, having that in a central place is so useful. Then the quality plan, like how much effort you're going to put into quality, figure that out with your team. And same thing with the risks. And I'm going to talk both about risk and quality in just a minute, so I won't go into that too much here. So just dumped a lot of information on you. Do you want me to pause for a minute and see if anybody has questions? Or
No, that was really good. I feel like if you can go deeper dive on quality and risk, that sounds good. But I think all of it was helpful. Okay,
I keep going. So here's quality. So I really just want to have this conversation. Is a decision that you're going to have to make. Having quality costs something, and not having quality costs something. There's no free here. So if you do it quick and dirty, like, the cost is that you might have to do it over, or your team might get discouraged because they have some failure points, or a client, might get frustrated, and that could be embarrassing, and that could cost you, a relationship. So, that's poor quality. But good quality costs the time to sort of assess things and to build prevention things in place and do testing, and that takes time away from building. So you have to sort of find the balance that works for you, depending on what types of customers you have and how deep and how close your relationship with them is, and sort of how stable and cohesive your team is. There are lots of things that go into making decisions about quality, but I think if you think about it in terms of time and money and people, you can sort of figure out, you know, where do you want to put the most effort, and that'll sort of help guide your decisions about quality. And then risks, I wanted to give you one sort of advanced project management thing that's pretty easy to do. So risk management is a thing that a lot of projects do not do. But I read a book years ago that was a Microsoft book. I'm trying to remember. I think it's called Rapid Development, where I learned about risk management and have implemented it on my projects ever since. So let's talk about what it is, and then I'll talk a little bit about why I think it's important and why I do it. So a risk register, which sounds really fancy, but isn't, is basically a spreadsheet. And I'm going to share one with you. Let me switch over what I'm sharing.
Yeah. Actually, it popped up, Johanna, immediately.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
And then I missed. Oh, it's because I'm sharing that screen. Okay,
Yeah.
so that was fine. Let me go back to, oh, come on, share. There it goes. Okay, is it still sharing?
Yeah, still sharing.
Okay,
we see the spreadsheet.
Okay, so this is a really simple spreadsheet where I list, you know, in column C what the risk is, in column D a little detail about it. Column E could be like technical risk, schedule risk, some, I don't know, you might come up with other categories. Then you want to think about like, how likely is it that it's going to happen? And then how bad is it going to be if it happens? And that's going to give you like a high, medium, or low overall risk. And you want to think about like, we're working on this risk, or yeah, that risk happened. now we're dealing with the problem. You want to think about like a main person who is sort of the point person for that problem, that can give you updates on how it's going. And then you want to have your plan for like, what are we going to do about this risk to try to make sure it doesn't happen? And you can see I have really straightforward things here, like we could lose time because resource constraints, or we could have technical problems that take extra time to figure out that we can't anticipate. We hope it's going to go okay, but we might run into a problem and we might get stuck for a few weeks, you know, just trying to figure something out. If you have a really small project or really quick project, you really want to watch these risks, because if you run into a technical thing that takes 3 weeks and you only have 3 weeks to do your project, like you have a serious problem. So you want to try to find these risks and see if you can find workarounds for them as early as possible. And if you all want this template, I'll clean it up and share it with you. So the way you figure out what the risks are is you ask the people on your team, you ask any vendors that you have, and you ask any of your stakeholders, like, what are the things that you think could go wrong with this project? And then through the course of the project, look for new risks. Every once in a while, pull out your list and update it. And question everything. Your project is going to change constantly in ways that you don't expect. People are going to leave, people are going to get sick, new technology is going to come out, somebody's going to show up and have this magical thing that helps everything go faster. AWS releases new tools all the time. So there's all different things that change the landscape of your project and that change your risks. The reason why I do the risk tracking is because it puts that in the mind of everyone on the project. Like, we recognize that these things could go wrong, and we kind of have thought through like, what's our plan if something goes wrong. So so early on, everybody sort of has this mindset of things are going to go wrong, and that's okay, and we'll figure it out together. So this is my last little bit. I want to talk about communication and execution. Curling always talks about planning, storytelling, and execution, and execution is my my bucket there. So for communication, it's a really important part of project management or management in general. And there are some tools like Slack and Basecamp that I think we've talked about before that are just really good tools for publishing notes and decisions from meetings, as well as just making the team available to think about when is a meeting time going to work and what's the latest update and where's that file stored and things like that. And then we have execution and Jira and Bitbucket. So Jira is like it's a planning and execution tool. And I'm going to show it to you. And Bitbucket is kind of a bug tracking tool. These tools are cool because they're related to each other and you can link things together, but that's a little more advanced than me and I'm not going to show you that today. But I did want to talk to you a bit about, okay, is Jira showing now?
Yes, it is, Johanna.
Okay, perfect. So you can organize your project work in kind of 2-week chunks. And for me, I include things other than just software development tasks. I include everything. If you have to write a document, if you have to have a meeting, if you need to make a decision about something, I include all of those things. And you all saw that when we built the schedule last time, that those are the tasks. So you take kind of the task list that you had from your project plan and you put them into Jira as tasks. And then you can kind of group them in 2-week increments. Jira has this cool feature where this is called the backlog. And so what you do is you just do data entry into the backlog, what needs to be done, make a plan, for example. And as soon as you type that in, it creates a new task. And I can go over here, I can open up the task, and I can try using Microsoft project. I can save it and I can say, actually, Carling already drafted this plan. Follow up with him. You can put notes in here and everybody can see it and I can assign it. I can say, I don't really feel like doing this. I'm going to give it to Stephen. So that there's, and then when I do these things, like here, let me go back and edit this guy. If I do this, this will send a notification to Curling. And what I just did with Stephen, that'll send a notification to Stephen. So every time I'm making a comment and I'm mentioning somebody from my team, it's going to tell them that I said something that was important relating to this activity. And it should send Stephen a notification. And if he doesn't like what I did, he can assign it back to me with a little comment saying like, no, I'm not the right person, but maybe you want to give it to Ganesh or someone else. And then you can create subtasks, like have a meeting to discuss win-win. And you can have finalize win-win outcomes. Start development activities. Oops, that's spelled wrong, but whatever. 577 presentation meeting. So you can just put in like any of the things that you know that you're going to be doing as a subtask to this one task. And then you have it on this, in this backlog view. So I'm going to switch back over. And then if I want to, I can create something called a sprint, which is basically like a bucket to keep things organized. And I can manage this through time. So let me do that. I'm going to make a sprint. So this sprint, it automatically just named it Sprint 7, but I think I can rename it.
And Johanna, I know you're getting into like language that you know groups don't know offhand, but
yeah.
one thing about like Sprint, you started using Sprint in some ways because it kind of gives like a cadence for the team. Is that
It
one?
does. So Sprint is a term that comes from agile methodology. And I don't usually, Sprint is probably the only word from that I use regularly with my team because it's such a common term. People who have development experience will probably be familiar with it. But it's just to think about it, it's literally what a sprint is. It's like a short distance run. Like how far can you go in this little short period of time? And it's usually 1 or 2 weeks. So what you want to do is take that big list of activities that you can add to as you learn things about your project and figure out over the next 1 or 2 weeks, what do we think we can accomplish? And so then you create this thing called a sprint. Like I'm going to call this like second half of September. You can call it anything you want. And you can put a goal in here or not. And I'm going to take these new tasks that I just created. No, I won't mess that one up. And I can drag them in here. And then, so right now it's just sort of in this planning phase, in this sort of, this little board that I can move things around in. But I can make an active sprint. So once I create this sprint, I can actually start it, and you can see that this one is actually in progress. And I can see like these things are still to do, these things are in progress, and these things are done. And I can move things around like, oh, that one's actually done, and you just put it over there. Or like, oh man, they said it was done, but it isn't really done. We'll put it back over here. And it's just such a useful, easy way to look at things. And then you can use this board to talk to your team. Like, can you give me the latest up, great job getting these things done. How are these things going? Are you stuck on anything that will help you, that you need help to get these things started? Or, did we think about the priority or the predecessors wrong? Like, are these things dependent on something else? Is there a reason? Maybe they don't even belong in the sprint and we should move them into the next one. So I don't want to go too deep into Jira because it's a whole new system, and it does take a little bit to think through the process and set things up, but I wanted to show you the tool and how easy it is to use it.
Well, I like that. I like that you at least showed the cohort the tool. Like, so in some ways, maybe being non-technical, being a CEO, knowing that there's tools like that out that your project managers use or that the team will use, right? The lead will use, is good. But I like how you describe it. I can see later on, and we'll talk about more about this on some of my questions, that if you don't have this type of tool, could you use a Kanban board, right? Is there other things that Brianna or Sunny or Vivian, they could use if they don't have Jira, because it has this really clean way that each meeting can go very smoothly on, okay, these things were done. These are things that we're working on. Does anybody need any support, right? So I know you're pulling up another tool. Okay, that's great. And this tool is Trello, right, Johanna?
Yeah. So this is a fun example. We do a big birthday party for the twins every year. And I use this tool called Trello, and this board looks quite similar to the one we just looked at, except it has pictures in it. And I use this to communicate with my sister-in-law and my mother what tasks we still need to do and what tasks still need to be done. But the same thing here, I can move things around. I can rename the columns. So you can make this like categories of things like I have here: invitations, outfits, decorations, food, activities, gifts. Or you could make it like, backlog, in progress, done, stuck, right? Just like the Kanban talk that I did. You can actually name the columns here, and you can move tasks between them in the same way. You can assign them to people. You can make comments. You can see there's I think there's a so there's an attachment here. There's just a description. here, I think there's four additional pictures here and a link to something. So this is a free tool called Trello. You can use your Google, your Gmail login to set up your account. It's super easy to use it, and it's free.
And that's kind of like a visual representation of that Kanban board where you had backlog, low priority, high priority, and done.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
And we used it here. We had started to use it when we were doing our classes, right? Where we were tracking customers, right? Like who have we called, who's committed, who's paid, and who have we sent the information to. So just a few different views to show you different ways you can use this, this board. I mostly use it for birthday party planning, but it's useful for other things too.
That's great. I know, Stephen, you asked the group if they have any questions. I don't see anything on the chat yet, but I had some questions initially. But I'll let Stephen. Stephen, you want to ask some of the questions you might have?
Yeah, I got a few questions for Johanna. One, thank you. Got some great information up there. I'm learning a lot already. So just a general project management question for you.
Sure.
So pivoting, of course, has been kind of this buzzword in the startup space. You hear it all the time, right? Drawing from your experiences in project management, are there some indicators that you know of that are kind of help you to determine from things that you know from your experience when to pivot and when to kind of see things through, kind of push forward on a project or task?
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about pivoting in your project rather than pivoting as your startup. Curling can answer the question about pivoting your startup, but for me, I think about it in terms of scope. Like we kind of have our objectives at a high level, what we want to accomplish. Like for Fokcus, we want to help early stage entrepreneurs. And that might look like we have classes, or we have software, or we have, online tech school, or we have, workshops. It could, or it could be, self-service videos. There are a lot of different ways, and those are just a few examples. But our overarching goal stays the same, which is to help those early stage and underserved entrepreneur communities. So that's kind of the North Star. But then during the course of the project, if we get really stuck, especially with a technical thing, like we just can't figure it out, that's a good time to be thinking about, like, should we reduce or change the scope? Like, is this feature something that our team has the capability to build? Is there a different way to get where we want to go? Curling talks a lot about business goes faster than technology. So is there a manual solution that accomplishes the same thing? So those are the types of pivots, and I usually see them at stuck points. And then once you have your initial development work done, you may see some pivot points when you get user feedback. So you want to, I think it was it Bryce that talked about a bit about user feedback, and then the Go Surf team recently talked a lot about how they collect information from their potential users and their users, and use that information to inform the decisions they make about development. So those are my thoughts on pivoting, but there's no secret formula. It's really just it's decision making. Your risk log will help you identify like how bad something is, so you could maybe use that as a more objective measure of when you have a problem.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have a question, Johanna, and you answered some of it too, actually, by bringing it. But I said when you talking to little Johanna, right? What was she using as tools. I know probably Trello wasn't out.
No.
Jira wasn't out. You have Jira, you have like what did Lil Joanna use to in some ways help like manage a project and people?
Yeah. So Microsoft Project's been around for a really long time.
Ah,
I actually had this job as a receptionist and then as a secretary at an environmental cleanup company, and we only had work to do when there was an emergency or a disaster, and the rest of the time I was mostly bored, and so I was tinkering around on the computer, and I found this software on there called Microsoft Project, and I started playing with it, and actually taught it to myself, and and learned all about it because it was fun for me, strangely, and then I told my brother about it, and then a few years later, I actually, he said, like, our company's hiring and we really need project managers, and I didn't have any project management experience, and one of the things that he used to convince the hiring manager to interview me was that I had taught myself Microsoft Project, and I like using it in my spare time.
that's great. That's
So,
great.
so anyway, so that tool's been around for a really long time, since I was, in my early 20s, and, and probably before that, but that was when I discovered it. But, paper, lists, spreadsheets, whiteboards, all those, manual tools are useful. You can do this exercise totally on paper. You just have to put more effort into communication. I think using these electronic tools sort of makes the information available and searchable for people. On a project I managed a couple years ago, we were in the very last phase of the project. It was really critical to hit our deadline because there were some new laws going into effect, and our system had to comply with these new laws. But my daughter got really sick suddenly in like the last 2 months of the project, and she was in the hospital, and I was not available to my team at all. Like, I don't want any calls. I don't want to talk to anybody. Like I'm sorry, you're gonna have to all figure it out yourself. But because we used Jira and Confluence, which is a tool kind of like Basecamp and connects to Jira, all the notes from our project were searchable. There was a project charter. Everything was documented. And this is a bigger organization than a startup, but taking the time to write a few things down and put them someplace that people can get to them can really help you if you have some sort of problem or crisis in the middle of your project, and you never know when those things are going to happen.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that too. I kind of know some of those projects are on a bigger organization, but I think what we're trying to teach the founders that just these little things, even initially, starts a culture of that, right? A culture of communication, a culture that you write things down just in case things happen, because there's a lot of things that happen in a startup actually where
exactly.
This is needed. Yeah.
And I guess think about all the people that work on your team, especially if you're doing a capstone or a student internship type program. Like, those students may stay with you, but they may not. They may go on to other projects, and you want to help them be successful in whatever they're doing. So whatever you can do that's sort of industry standard and best practices that help them learn those skills that will be useful for them when they move on to the next thing, and then talk about how awesome your startup was. Those are really positive, and Curling really has done a good job in instilling that in our culture, that we want to not, even though we're a startup, right? We want to still be doing things in a way that the industry can understand, and we use the same language and we use the same tools, and we may use very scaled back versions of those things, and we use simplified versions of those things, and we use only a small subset of the features, but anything that you do during the course of these types of projects that help those students or interns sort of develop those skills helps them tremendously and builds this huge amount of goodwill.
That's great. I have a question. It kind of relates to this, but I always know, like, when you have before our kind of cohort meetings, I always try to get questions that I can maybe ask you, Joanna. So it's somewhat in a realm of one of your superpowers. And we'll see how this goes. One thing is actually a lot of startups will have a team, right? And you want to keep motivating the team, or you want to keep engaging the team. Using some of these tools does help with some of that, right? On motivating people. But I know you do interesting things even outside that, like making these awards for people, or making sure they get educated by taking them places. Like, can you explain a little bit about why you do that,
Sure.
or what experience you have on that?
Yeah.
The Bucky Awards.
So, exactly. So there's this concept of pluses and minuses. And if you think about a project or a relationship, which is what you have with your team, the more pluses you have, the more goodwill and positive stuff you have sort of in the bank. And the more minuses you have, like negative things happening or negative interactions, that sort of depletes your account. And if you think about, think about like when you're at your very lowest and you run into a problem, like how you deal with it versus like everything's going great and you run into a problem. So when everything's going great and you have this, your tank is full and you're in a really good place mentally, like a problem is a speed bump. It just barely affects you. But when you're like your lowest low, and then you run into a problem, you're like, really, one more thing, and it crushes you. So so you want to think about how can you quickly fill up those tanks or those accounts of positive things that helps your team get over speed bumps. And especially when your team is new and a little fragile, you want to try to take the time to shore up those accounts, I guess. And so we do a few things. One of the things is we take people on field trips. We take them to have lunch with our friend at Google, or we take them to some VIP event that they normally wouldn't have access to, that we might not even go to because there's too many of them to right? So you have access to things that entry-level employees and students might not, because you're a CEO, because you're a founder, or because you have some specific role in some organization. And think about how those experiences can be enriching for them, and participate in it with them as a peer. Really can be a great experience for them. And then another thing that we do is, Colleen was talking about Bucky Awards, and we also have Macron Awards. So I worked for this interactive media company, and it was called Frontier Media Group. And so everything was sort of Western themed. And at the end of a project, they gave out something called a Bucky Award, which was this Buckaroo Bonsai Award. That was a statue of a guy a cowboy on a bucking bronco, and you got one for like best attitude, or like learning fast, or all those superlative things you'd have in your yearbook. And it was really fun, and everybody was so proud of their Bucky Awards. I still have mine even 20 years later. And my brother, I think, has 2, and so he likes to gloat that he has more Bucky Awards than I do. But we use that as inspiration to create something in Fokcus called a Macron Award. The Macron is the line over the O in the Fokcus name, and it sounds like something fancy, and so we named them Macron Awards. But they're little, I don't have one handy, but I bet Stephen, you have yours? You may not have it where you are now.
No, I don't have it with me, sorry.
Travel with it. I love it, but not that much. I don't have one handy, but it's a tart tin upside down with a plastic toy on top of it. And we were going to an event, and I don't know what struck me. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning, and Colleen was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm making awards. What do you think?" And we made little certificates that went with them. And was a bag of toys that we got like at the thrift store for like $2, and some tart tins that I happened to have in the kitchen that I hadn't used, and I turned them upside down and used, super glue and attached the figures on top so it looked like a little statue, and then each of the characters sort of had something unique about it, and so we tied the awards that everybody got to the characters. Like Curling, what was the recent ones you just sent out?
Well, the recent ones Stephen got the Vision Award.
Yeah,
It was like a little monkey who had looking through, little looking class, and then I did the Adventure Award. I did for one of our interns because always adventurous. They'll try new things, new APIs, and stuff like that. And so yeah, I think it was just something that maybe in some ways you inspired for all of us.
But I think like we had another one that was like a frog, and he said if you're feeling froggy, you just leap in, and so that was another, like a person who just would try anything. So you can get real creative, and low budget, and still do things that are fun and unique.
That's great. I was just gonna add that too. We were talking about a little bit about motivation and team and stuff. I thought you have some really interesting ideas.
Yeah.
I do not have Stephen. I know he has one more other question, and we'll wrap it up. But Stephen, you want to ask that one?
Sure. Yeah. So I got one other question for you, Johanna. So this is kind of the bookend question that we've asked a few startups, a few entrepreneurs already, but a little more tailored to you. But so imagine you had a chance to talk to your younger self before, kind of in the early stages of your journey, right, in project management specifically. Are there kind of one or two tips? Could be something you've already discussed, or maybe just a, kind of brief overview of it. But are there one or two tips that you would give your past self, and why, given what you know now?
Yeah. One of them is humility is really important. So even though you might be the CEO or you might be the leader of a project, you don't know everything, and you need to think about your team as a group of people that are not your minions, right? They're your colleagues, your supporters, your collaborators, and to treat people with respect, and and act with integrity. I think when I was very young, I had some project management responsibility, and I was bossy and organized, but not very emotionally intelligent. And I think that the project outcomes suffered because I didn't take the time to treat my team like people, rather than people that I was suddenly allowed to assign things to. That's one. I'm trying to think of another one. I think that we've talked a bit about the risks. I think that risk management, especially if you have external stakeholders, is a really excellent tool, because you can tell people right up front, like, I've thought through this, and these are the things that I think might go wrong. Like if you had an investor, like I think our risk register would be a really excellent tool to tell them, like, I've really thought through this, and these are our weak points. These are our potential problems. And that way, when you encounter those problems, you can tell them, like, remember when I told you that this might happen? Well, now it happened, and here's what we're doing about it. And you really sound polished and in control of things. And you really sound thoughtful when you take the time to do things like that.
Those are great, Johanna. Yeah, those are good. I want to have you just stop your screen sharing for now. And I just want to thank you for all the pearls of wisdom, of course, on that part, especially things that's really tailored to our startups right now, going into 577, getting interns. Brianna, I know got accepted 577, but also Sunny, we're gonna have her do Tech Hire.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so she's gonna apply for that one. we'll work with Vivian and also maybe Tripty too on like what other resources they can actually get too. So just getting them prepared is kind of like one of the key things I want to do. So that's it on that. So thank you. Stephen, you want to wrap it up for us?
Sure. So Johanna, thanks for coming on. Thanks for speaking today. Just to piggyback off Curling a little bit. Thanks for dropping all those pearls of wisdom, and then thanks for sharing your experience, your knowledge, all the stories you were able to share with us today. They're really super helpful. I know there's a lot of people that we talked to that were excited to tune into this talk later. So thank you. For those of you tuning in, whether it's on YouTube, Zoom, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Every like, every comment that we get pushes out our videos to more and more people. So that like or that comment that you leave could allow this video to be heard by an entrepreneur startup who really needs to hear the message, right? So, so it's an easy way for those of you watching to give back and help support the community. But as always, thanks guys for tuning in, and take care. I'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for having me.
Hey everyone, Steven here with Fokcus. Thanks for tuning in today. If you liked the video today, be sure to hit that like button and give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate it. If you have thoughts and you'd love to share them, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. We love to hear from you guys. We're always looking for feedback on how we can improve and make our videos better, so feel free to leave a comment if you can. And if you'd like to be notified on future videos and future episodes of Tech School, feel free to hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and you'll be notified anytime we post a new video. But as always, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.